Hi there, welcome to my channel where I take you on tours of tiny and unique homes and showcase stories of people living alternatively. In today's episode, we're meeting up with one young couple who live in a teeny tiny home that they've transformed into an incredible full-time residence. This creative tiny house renovation tests the challenges of small space living and showcases how to make every square foot count. They'll take us on a tour and talk about how living tiny has helped them prioritize their education while living in a cozy and functional home. But before we jump right in, make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you know every single time we publish a new unique home tour.
I'm Gauranga.
And I'm Vrini.
And welcome to our tiny house, Raja. Raja was actually originally an Airbnb that we modified to make it into a full-time living tiny home. I work with Simplify Further, tiny house company. I've been working with them for about 3.5 years. This was originally built for an Airbnb, but this was also the second tiny house that we've built. It's just sitting there. It was almost about time for me to renew another year's lease in my apartment. Would it be possible for me to rent it? The hours that I put into renovating it would go towards me living here, basically. And after those hours expire, then I'll just pay rent. It's still like a fraction of the cost of what I would have been paying if I had an apartment.
For me, moving into this tiny house, it was actually very unexpected. Once he got into it, I became more interested and looked at a bunch of videos and I was like, wait, I want to do this with you. And then he renovated this place and 3 weeks later we moved in.
The start of this renovation project, it wasn't ideal. So the walls, everything had to come out, basically down to the studs. Because I took everything out, I kind of had a clean slate to restart. Now we live in it, and it's actually only an 18-foot long tiny house, so it's not so much big of a space, but we maximized on every inch of this place. From the start of this project to the end of it, it took a little bit over 2 weeks. My family thinks that this is a great opportunity for me, especially to save money. I am 24. My plan is, after I finish school, to have enough money to put a down payment on the house.
Living in a small space makes you not have a lot of items. I don't need a bunch of extra items to live well. So I think that's a really beautiful part of living in a tiny house.
Welcome to the outside of Raja. This is our 18-foot tiny home. It's also 8 feet wide. Siding, it's T111. It's okay, but it's not really great for maintenance because it does need to be repainted about every 1 to 2 years, depending on which climate you're in. Because this is exposed wood, it should ideally be polyurethane about once every year. Other than that, there isn't much of a need for maintenance. For the outside, we have this metal roof, and it's nice, especially when it's raining. It's actually pretty soothing. One thing that we really wanted in this build was a lot of natural light. So we actually took plexiglass. I think it spans about almost 7 feet wide. This array of windows up in the loft. It's actually really nice. Because we're living in a tiny house, we like to maximize on all the space that we have. So with this outdoor space, it also makes it a nice addition to living in this tiny home. We have this clawfoot tub and this patio space over here, along with these beautiful banana trees that were planted, and they actually do produce fruit. This was originally all here as part of the Airbnb, and now we just use it whenever it's really hot outside and we don't want to drive to the beach or whatever. We just fill it up and take a nice bath. On the cold days that we have, which aren't very long, we have a hot water heater and also the space heater to keep us warm for the bathtub outside. All right, come with me, let's check out the inside. Welcome to the inside. Here we have our kitchen. Originally, because this was Airbnb, we had just hot plate, and now we have this induction stove. It's a 2-burner, which works really, really well, but we usually tend to make multiple preps at the same time. So we have Instapot, and we also have this 7-in-1 toaster oven. So with all these tools combined, we usually make something amazing. And the fridge, it's a slightly bigger one than that was originally in here when this was an Airbnb. We'd probably only use half of the space. When I was reconstructing all of this, I wanted to make sure that I maximized on everything. So I thought, what about if I use this wall as a spice rack? It gives us enough space to cook, and it's just far enough from the stove where nothing melts. So yeah, it worked out perfectly. Originally, this wall was actually a foot further back. The bathroom was actually only 5 feet wide, and now it's 6 foot wide. I had to move this wall a foot up and also reconstruct the whole wall, including reconfigure the studs and whatnot. Because we moved this wall a foot further up, it decreased the kitchen length. We have a smaller kitchen, but it works just as well. It really didn't change much. We don't really need such a big kitchen. This butcher block countertop is actually, I think, 4 inches shy of 8 feet. Here we have a pretty big sink, and it's deep too. I definitely wouldn't go any smaller. I think the sink size is perfect. When we wash our dishes, we have drying pads here and here, so it all works out. And then when we're not cooking, we're use this spot as our desk for studying. So we have our laptops, notepads right here. Ever since I was a little kid, I always liked planting. And one time I tried to plant a mango tree here. It didn't really survive, but that was a fond memory of mine. So I've always been trying to plant. So I think we have about maybe 10 plants in here total. My thought behind it was basically it just adds a bit of color, and the more plants, the better for the air quality too. When we built these steps, we wanted to make sure that they were really, really strong. The cutout that I used for the sink, I actually recycled it and I used it here. What we didn't realize was how it's basically just dead space. Like, yes, we have these steps, and yes, they're strong. Yes, it gets us upstairs. However, if we could have made it multi-functional, it would have been a better use of this space. For example, it would have been nice if, let's say, these steps here, if it opened up and it had a shelving that we could have put our shoes in, it would have been a lot better.
Moving into a tiny house from a full-size house was definitely something I was worried about. I really wanted to incorporate a tiny house bathroom that felt the right space for me. Walking in, you first have the shower pan here. We put a bigger one in, and then we incorporated a bunch of different little nooks in here to allow for storage space. So in this shower, we have a storage space for shampoo, conditioner, soaps, which I really didn't want to be bumping into while taking showers. So Gauranga actually built it in the wall. So that was really interesting. I really love that. We have another space here that allows for different storage, for makeup, different things like that. The extra foot in this bathroom really allowed for clothes, and that was a big worry for me. So we got to add different drawers back here. And one thing I really love is this window here, because it opens up, so it kind of feels like another door, and it also allows for a lot of extra lighting. The 1 foot in this renovation added a huge difference. Coming in here before, I felt like I could hardly move around. It just felt squished. I didn't have enough storage, and so that extra foot, honestly, this is one of my favorite parts of the house. I sometimes come in and sit on the floor and do my homework when we have a bunch of people here, and I love it. And just as a woman who loves getting ready and using that space, it really adds a lot. All right, now let's go look at the bedroom. Welcome to the loft. This is where we have our bed. We have a queen size bed here. We love it. It has enough space for the 2 of us, and it also allows us to have our friends here because we have our TV that we like to pull out and have all of us up here. The thing about having a bed in a loft is you really want to have air circulation underneath it, otherwise it will get moldy if it's just on the floor. So we added a little bed frame here. It just lifts it up a bit, and then it adds circulation to get rid of that mold problem. Thankfully, we have a higher ceiling, so lifting the bed wasn't a problem for us. Making the bed for me isn't a problem. I don't hit my head, or I'm not struggling because of that height. I really love it. The lighting is something that's really important just to add that coziness. So I got these curtains. I keep them closed mostly so that the light doesn't add heat up here, but they're thin, so it still has that natural light. Up here we also have some storage, which more clothes for me because you never have enough clothes. I really like the storage here just in terms of how much I have, but I would like to close it off a bit. It can feel a bit messy if it's not folded properly, so I would maybe add some like drawers instead of baskets, but the rest of the space is really wonderful. So the couch here was still like this when we first moved in, but the storage was not used when it was an Airbnb, so we started using it a lot. Under here it pulls up. We have our winter stuff, hoodies, sleeping bags, different things like that. Under here is some extra storage for clothes that we pack away. These are clothes we don't use as much, so we don't need to access it all the time, but it's definitely very useful for what we have.
I think tiny house living is very possible. Moving into one was pretty smooth for us. I could definitely see how it's an intimidating challenge, but I don't think it's nearly as hard as people may think it is.
In the long run, it's a lot cheaper than building a, big foundation home or so-and-so. So if you are really interested in it, save that little chunk of money and invest in your future. Living in a small space gives you the opportunity of just like living a little more freely in a sense.
Thanks for watching this week's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And we're gonna be featuring more tiny homes located on this property, so be sure to check back soon.